Yes, we arrived in a state of post-factual reporting. Facts doesn't matter anymore. And I can explain that. I was in the Donbass several times in the war zone, and after the Western orchestrated coup on the Maidan in Kiev in February 2014, more and more Western mainstream media took out their correspondents from the conflict zone. Normally, you would say we have to go in, but Western media got out. So they did not want to see what's really happening on the ground. So they tried to avoid reality. That's the point. They tried to avoid. They decided to follow NATO propaganda, nothing else.
Hello, everybody. This is Pascal from Neutrality Studies, and today I'm talking again to Patrik Baab, a German journalist and media critic who wrote the fantastic German language books On Both Sides of the Front, My Travels to Ukraine, and, very relevant for this talk, Research, a toolkit for criticizing the prevailing opinion. Having worked for one of Germany's state broadcasters before, Patrik is intimately familiar with how the system works in Germany, and I'm happy he agreed to help me make sense of a really bizarre recent program on ZDF, that is Germany's second state broadcaster, a little bit like NPR in the United States. That documentary that I'm talking about is entitled Putin's Helpers, or Putin's Aids. It tells in sensational form how Trump, Musk, and others right around the US president are in cahoots with the Kremlin to undermine the United States. This and the paranoid state of German media is what we want to discuss today. So, Patrik, welcome back.
Hello, Pascal. Thank you for inviting me to the show. It's great to be back.
It's great having you because you actually understand how this system works and how it came to work itself into something that I can only describe as paranoia. Let me just set this up by reading to everybody how this documentary presents itself on the ZDF broadcaster's homepage, right? I cannot show you the thing itself because it's copyrighted and because it's in German, but here's a translation of like how it presents what it is about. ZDF correspondent Johannes Hano came across previously unknown and explosive connections between the former adversaries, the United States and Russia, during his research. He managed to obtain first-hand information from an FBI agent, and what the agent reports is explosive. According to him, the private and professional circles of the US tech billionaires were infiltrated by Russian intelligence services. Does this have consequences for US national security? There is a large body of evidence supporting this fact, says Jonathan Boomer, the FBI whistleblower. Patrik, when you watched this documentary, it's about 45 minutes long, what went through your mind?
Well, that's really thrilling and, well, really dramatic. But as a filmmaker for 40 years, I'm thinking firstly about the production process. And you can find more of that in my book, Research, a Toolbox for Criticizing the Prevailing Opinion, which is published in the West End publisher 2 years ago. So preparing TV documentaries, you have three levels of investigation. The first level is the informational research. What do I have to find out? That's the simple question. The second level is the visual research. Which pictures are representing the investigation result? And this is something you have to do very accurate. And the third level is the production research. What to do when and how in shooting the film. I think this is something we can leave out here. On all three levels, you have to meet professional standards, and we'll explain those professional standards. For the informational research, first of all, you have to answer 7 journalistic questions. Who is doing what? When? Where? In which way, how, why, and where does the information come from? Where does the information come from? And the last question is the most important question, and it has to be answered first. Is the basic information given by any informant accurate? Is that information true? This, I have to answer this question first. And this is the most important question, because this question means the reliability of the first source, the first source. This is something you have to find out. Otherwise, you can kick the topic into the garbage bin. Working on sources means you have to divide those sources in different groups. First of all, written sources. That means internal files, original documents, which are hard proofs. The second are interviews, which can be divided as well in three groups. Witnesses, that means people who were directly involved in political processes. The second group is people who are providing opinions of probably representatives of a conflict party, for example, representatives of political parties or non-government organizations or companies or something else. And the third group of people, of living sources, are experts having a certain distance to what is happening right on the scene. So, and on the basis of this framework, the author can create a hypothesis with four elements. First, he has to find out who's the responsible one. He has to find a responsible person or group. The second group is the group of victims. Can I define some people who are suffering uh, under processes? And you have to find a cause. And the fourth point is you have to find a result or an outcome. And doing this, you have to keep in mind that this hypothesis can be wrong. It must not, it don't have to be reality. So you have to make a reality check. Or is this hypothesis right? Or is it completely wrong? Is it an effect of my mind, of my prejudices, or something else? And overall, balanced reporting means to present all important aspects of the story. That means no framing in favor of one side. This is not allowed. And now I'd like to apply these rules on the documentary you mentioned. Is the first information reliable that Donald Trump was influenced by Putin? This is the hypothesis. The answer is two investigation committees in the United States, documented in the Mueller report and in the Durham report, found out that there is not a single proof that Donald Trump got under the influence of the Kremlin or the Russian secret services. Not a single witness could confirm under oath that he or she has witnessed anything or got any evidence of that. There is nothing. All sources provided in this feature just unproved allegations, nothing else. Both reports documented that the whole story around Russiagate was a tall tale and a fake story of the Democratic Party to make Hillary Clinton win the presidential campaign against Donald Trump and to disturb Trump's first presidential term. And the second goal was to keep the United States on a hard conflict course against Russia, which brought a lot of advantages for the military-industrial complex. Both reports documented clearly that the mainstream media supported the dirty campaign of the Democratic Party against Donald Trump. Most publishers and editors-in-chiefs and reporters were involved. And when the reports were made public, not a single of them had the courage to ask for an excuse. No self-criticism at all. This shows the complete depravity of journalism today, not only of American journalism. And the reporter of the documentary, Johannes Hanu, is just repeating unproved allegations of unreliable sources and informants with vested interests, which were not identified and not made transparent. And this is a hard violation of journalistic methods and rules. It is completely unethical, completely unjournalistic, and just trying to produce fake news for the German public. There is no reality check at all. The reporter is just reporting the prejudices of his own, or is texting what his editor-in-chief wants to hear or to read. This is not reporting. It is a kind of projection of his own meanings and prejudices. Not a single confrontation with the allegations took place. Accurate journalism has to confront the affected ones or the affected people under suspicion and ask for a statement or an answer. In not a single case, the other side was heard or confronted. This is a violation of the journalistic main rule. The other side has to be heard as well, or in Latin, audiatur et altera pars. And coming up to the visual research. Visual research means to find the right pictures to portray an accurate investigation result. But the reporter used only two sorts of rushes. First of all, archives, and second, self-portrayal pictures the reporter during interviews or talks. The way of reporting does exactly not mean to search the right pictures. In the pictures, you have to show proofs. But if you don't have proofs, you cannot present them. In the choice of the interviewees, all talking heads are criticizing Trump and are promoting allegations that he was under influence of the Kremlin, I can say an influence agent of the Kremlin. Not a single opponent was asked. The choice of the interviewees was completely one-sided, just a complete framing. The selection of the archives had only one goal, to surline and to visualize the prejudices of the reporter. It was just a kind of framing in the desired direction. The rushes of the film shooting aimed to surline the investigative character of the documentary. It was a kind of self-portrayal as an investigative reporter. Overall, this was not accurate reporting. It was just broadcasting of propaganda lies, obviously to promote anti-Russian propaganda of the NATO and the German government for continuing the support of the Ukraine war. The whole documentary was, from my point of view, a propaganda piece in support of the warmongers in Germany and in the NATO, and such a piece is a violation of the commandment of peace written in the German constitution. And my summary is, this feature shows the decline of German journalism. Today we lost the level of accurate reporting and neutral information and reached the level of propaganda company of the NATO. The media today are trying to drive people deeper into the Ukraine war. They are a conflict party of the propaganda war, aside of the economic warfare and the military actions along the front line. Finally, I'd like to quote the famous American novelist Hunter S. Thompson, who worked as a journalist for more than 50 years. In his novel Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, he characterized his own profession, the journalists. Let me quote that. The press is a gang of cruel fagots. Journalism is not a profession or a trade. It is a cheap cajole for fuck-offs and misfits, a false doorway to the backside of life, a filthy, piss-ridden little hole nailed off by the building inspector, but just deep enough for a wino to curl up from the sidewalk and masturbate like a chimp in a zoo cage. So far, Hunter S. Thompson.
That might be a little bit rough. A little bit.
A little bit rough, yes. But he knows what he's talking about.
I mean, we are also talking about the kind of journalists that thrive inside these environments of public broadcasters, right? And like you told me before via email that the journalist who created this piece of propaganda is actually the son of another journalist, right?
Yes.
Who I think you said did pretty well in his career.
Yes, I know his father very well. He was a very famous journalist, a reporter, a good correspondent, and his son is, well, I think at Johannes Hanus, it's all about career and nothing else. And he knows exactly what his editor-in-chief wants to hear and to read, and this is just, well, a propaganda piece of NATO. It's not accurate reporting.
Yeah, and we have to go into that, but maybe toward a later part of the talk, because first I really wonder also about the intention behind this, because this is so weird to me, because the propaganda is getting worse and worse and more obviously propagandistic. I mean, just for the viewers, one of the people interviewed, the one person was this FBI agent who apparently came out as a whistleblower and really brave and kind of trying to shine a light on in the darkness. But the other person, one of the other people, was Nina Yankowicz. Nina Yankowicz. That's this disinformation czar of President Biden. I mean, to recall, about 2 or 3 years ago, Biden wanted to create this disinformation governance board in order to decide what is truth and what's not. And Nina Yankowicz was tapped as for heading that new agency. And this was such a lunatic. She was a very bizarre character on her own, but the idea itself to create an arbiter of truth, a government arbiter of truth, was so outlandish that Biden had to give it up, right? And this is the person who was interviewed as another expert to talk about this situation. Why? How is it that this is coming from a German state broadcast, a German propaganda piece? Because it's clearly directed towards the German audience. What's the purpose behind creating this convoluted conspiracy theory?
Well, you can choose this lady as an interviewee, but you have to make clear her personal interest. And you have to take another interviewee who works as an opponent to her. That is possible. This is accurate reporting. And I think in German public, Russiagate is widely unknown. And because it is the whole affair is widely unknown, it is an American affair. This is a door into propaganda. You can tell the German public everything. And the author tries here to present himself as an investigative reporter without coming into a contradiction to German authorities. He, in the role of an investigative reporter, he tries to do something for his own career and to align with German authorities. But this is not investigative reporting. Investigative reporting means to control political power. And this is something he does. This what the reporter is not doing. He does not control political power. He's aligning with political power and with NATO, with authorities in Germany. And probably he wants to do something for his career.
Yeah, I mean, especially in the US, it's very popular to depict journalism as, I mean, shining light into darkness. I think that's even the slogan of the Washington Post, democracy dies in darkness, or standing up to power, right? Speaking truth to power. But this kind of stuff, I mean, it attacks somebody over who doesn't have any bearing over you, right? There's no courage involved in all of this, and it's clearly meant to send a political signal and create a political narrative. The fascinating thing is that this is like a German narrative about what's happening in the United States. Because if it was about their own government or about, let's say, the AfD, right, the right-wing conservative party that everybody on the left liberal side hates and despises so much, I would understand that because that's your own political context. But this is even a foreign political context. How does that make sense to you?
It makes absolutely sense because there are some differences between the Trump administration and the Europeans regarding the Ukraine war, especially. There are two political positions, two different political positions. You can see that in the peace talks in Istanbul, which we had last week, and there are two political different positions. The Biden administration wants to cut a deal with the Russians, and the Europeans want to go on to continue the war. That's very, very clear. And this reporter aligns with the European positions in creating NATO-related narratives. And the goal is to create narratives which can produce more Russophobia. This is the goal of the whole show.
But is it just Russophobia, or is it also a way for for this group of people, this epistemic community, to rationalize away the problem that the main ally, or I would actually argue the hegemon, the one with power over you, is not on the same page anymore. You know, your mental world would collapse if you had to accept that the top dog who you've been following for so long is now not on the same page with you anymore, right? So you need to explain that problem away. So you need an aiding hypothesis to make sense of the world again.
Well, the reckoning of the Europeans and especially the German government is hopefully the Trump administration will fail in the fight against the deep state in the United States. That means in the fight against the neocons, which are sitting in the Pentagon, in the Foreign Office, in the CIA. And the German thinking is hopefully the deep state of the United States, which means the neocons of the Democratic Party, are going to block the Trump administration in this peace course. And so the German government and the German reporting and the German media want to align with the deep state in the United States of America. Hopefully, the Trump term will be over in 4 years, and we can restart with the war with a new democratic government in Washington.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes good sense, because they're on the same page. The interesting thing here is that this is also coming from a public broadcaster. And if you look at the kind of shows that they've been producing, this is not the only one. This is one of many in which a German TV show tries to investigate something that's happening in the US in order to reinforce this German European position of how the war should be going, and this demonization, of course, of everything as Putin guided, Putin connected, Putin's helpers, right? All of this seems to allude that there's this overly powerful Russian Kremlin machinery that's like a kraken, right? Grabbing not only Europe but also into the United States. And funnily enough, those are the people who would accuse us of spreading conspiracy theories and fake news. How do you explain to yourself that this just flows in a media environment that officially says of itself it's free? Nobody, this is not the state, this is not Mr. Mertz telling everybody what to report. They do that of their own will. How do you explain that to yourself?
Well, this is something my colleague Patrick Lawrence explained in his book, Journalists and Their Shadows. So in journalism, the danger is very high that you got into a split personality. You have to go by the rules of your publishers and editors-in-chief because they are giving the orders. And in your mind, you feel this is not an accurate investigation result, but you need the money of your company. So most journalists are splitting up their personality in two parts. The one part is the journalist who makes money, and the other one who disappears in the background is the journalist who is following ethical rules. Because following ethical rules is not possible in this system. It's completely not possible. And I could explain that. When the Americans and the British allies after the Second World War tried to implement a democratic and state-free broadcasting system in Germany, they had in their minds the example of the BBC. But all media scientists all over the map agree that the mainstream media, including the public broadcasters, are following the state-given narratives. And this works in Germany as well. And the editors-in-chief, the leading editors, the first editors, are receiving very high salaries. And these contracts are giving out by the so-called ZDF Fernsehrat. And in this,
The TV council, yeah.
exactly, and in this council, you may find the politicians who should be under control. And this is the main contradiction of this system. In the end of the show, everybody who wants to get a new contract is aligning with the state narratives
Hmm.
because the show is over when he doesn't align with the state narratives.
As in
That's the
the
point.
person will be fired if I mean we'll not get a
Exactly,
new
yes.
contract. We'll just not get a new contract.
Yep. Probably not fired, but you had to go back to a worse paid contract, for example, or as a freelancer, you won't get an unlimited contract, or as a freelancer, you won't get a new film to make. This is yeah, that's the point. You have to survive in the system, and you have to make money, and that's the main question.
So in a sense, we delude ourselves when we think that it's possible to build a truly
Yes,
free and independent media. I mean, all media is in one way or another dependent on social or political constraints.
exactly. That's completely right. You have an inequality of power. So the press is owned privately, and the owner, the publisher, can can fix the rules of and can fix the political line of the editors. That's the point.
I just one of the things that still surprises me, especially about this documentary, is just also this obsession with what's happening in the United States. And I get it. I mean, the United States is the most important, let's say, politically most important decision maker for almost every European out there because decisions made in Washington touch us directly because we are the underlings. And I as a Swiss, I think we we depend on the EU and on Germany, but Germany and the EU depends on the United States, right? It's like we're circling in the universe these larger powers. Um, but this level of obsession with foreign leaders, and it's Trump and Putin, right? Seems almost it seems almost sick at this point in to which that the state broadcasters are trying to dig into like these foreign leaders. Do you have any thoughts about this one?
Yes. First of all, I have good contacts in the United States. I'm in good conversations with a lot of people. I'm visiting those guys, experienced men and women. And I know by private talks a lot of Trump voters. And these people are the so-called normal people, truck drivers, barkeepers, taxi drivers, internet operators, and so on and so on. And these people are these are poor people, and these people are completely frustrated from the Trump administration, from the Democrats. And the result is they get Trump voters. This is a kind of protest voting in the United States. And this reporter, the author of this documentary, shows that he didn't understand anything of the United States and the political processes over there. He is living in a bubble. He's just living in a bubble. That's the first point I want to say. And the second point is he is projecting his own fears and prejudices into the United States today. And this is, well, from a journalistic point of view, it's a big mistake to make a projection in that way. And he's shifting his own fears. He's personalizing his own fears into two persons, Trump and Putin. And, well, the background is I'm aligning with German authorities. That's the main point of this reporting.
Yeah. So in a sense, it just speaks to the psychological state of Germany, but also of large parts of Europe, who at this point feel attacked and betrayed, and who think that what they have to do is to stand up and to huddle together and sit out the Trump administration and show that this is an evil regime now on both sides, and we need to get back to sanity, and sanity is a joint Euro-Atlantic holy war against the orcs from the east.
Yes, according to my experience, you may find in the German population one fifth, 20%, who has the courage to think by themselves in a way of its own, to find sources of its own, and to stay with the peace element in our constitution. But four-fifths or 80% are aligning with authorities for projecting their own fear into these authorities to make themselves stronger. So this is an anti-democratic behavior, but it works. And it works in times of a crisis and in war times very well. Those people are following the warmongers. And the journalists are not better. They are part of the process.
Would you think that these journalists are the shepherds of this sheep following the warmongers? Or are they themselves sheep that are shepherded by, the people with actual power?
No, they are the sheepdogs.
Ah,
They are the sheepdogs. And they are driving the viewers, the readers, deeper and deeper into this war. Journalists are not unguilty. They are part of the process, and they are part of the propaganda process. They are acting as a propaganda company of the NATO because they think it's good for their career.
yeah, that makes very good sense. I think that's a good metaphor. Um, it's just it's just funny because these people also lack the introspection to understand what they're doing, right? Uh,
Yes.
and what they're engaged in. And while these people think of themselves as super brave for standing up to power in the United States, I mean, this guy would never touch Nord Stream, even with a stick, right? He would never ever do that, because that would go against that narrative. Do you have any hope though that there are people within the system? I mean, you were in the system and you clearly came out of it and you clearly tried to make the most out of what you have learned from within the system. Is the system able to reform itself also by, not everybody sleeping in there, are they?
This is an interesting question. Well, in this moment, I'm remembering a word of the American novelist Upton Sinclair that he wrote in the year 1934. He wrote, "It is difficult to make a man understand something when his salary depends on his not understanding.
Mhm.
And I think this is completely right. And those journalists will not understand. They cannot understand, and they don't want to understand the truth of this war. They don't want to understand, so they cannot understand. I think mainstream media are completely lost after the corona crisis, and especially in the Ukraine war, because mainstream media are lying to the public in all Western countries. What they are covering is not the truth of the war on the ground. I know that. I was over there, and mainstream media want to lie to the public because they're getting money for lying to the public. So I think mainstream media are completely lost because of a lot of good reporters and editors left the system. They got out. And now they are engaged in the new media, like your show or the Post Hill magazine in Canada, in Germany, Nachdenkseiten, in Switzerland, similar publications. So you have to go to other publications, and I can advise to the public, please use other publications. The mainstream media are not helpful for getting information, only for getting disinformation.
Somehow we need to fix this because I mean there was a moment when mainstream maybe wasn't perfect, but at least it reported, as in it told you what happened. And there was always questions of bias, like why do you pick more stories from here and less from there? Why so much about the US and so little about Namibia? For an example, I mean, why does Namibia not figure? Okay, fine. But when they reported, there was a level, at least a basic level of factual representation of what happened, and that is going further and further away from us
Yes.
every single day.
Yes, we arrived in a state of post-factual reporting. Facts doesn't matter anymore. And I can explain that. I was in the Donbass several times in the war zone, and after the Western orchestrated coup on the Maidan in Kiev in February 2014, more and more Western mainstream media took out their correspondents from the conflict zone. Normally, you would say we have to go in, but Western media got out. So they did not want to see what's really happening on the ground. So they tried to avoid reality. That's the point. They tried to avoid. They decided to follow NATO propaganda, nothing else. And so they lost the ground of reality. And so the next step is leave these media. We have to get our information from other media. This media system is completely corrupted.
Yeah, I agree. And there's levels to it, and there's differences across countries. But in general, one of the most valuable things to do, I believe, is to read books like yours on media critic, because at the end of the day, it's easy to criticize the broadcast. It's difficult to create a conceptual underground for yourself in order to be able to critically reflect on what's being told to you, because nobody should believe you and I when they watch this one, right? They should critically reflect. The good
Yeah.
thing is comment sections actually lend themselves to also do that for those who want and those who don't just want to throw out insults. Um, do you know, and so your book, of course, in German is like highly recommended in order to build that toolkit. Do you know about an English language book that you would recommend to read in order to get more finesse in media critic?
Oops, I'm surprising. I would go back to you mentioned him before.
Noam Chomsky?
Yes, Noam Chomsky, manufacturing concern. This is just a good tip, I think. I would start with that, manufacturing concern. So I have to go through my books. I have a lot of them, but I don't know what I could recommend.
Yeah. Which ones
Most
are
are
in
in
English?
German. Most are in German. Most, I have to
The
say.
I had
Oh
this.
yes, I have found an old book which is pretty good. It's on American reporting. It is just a moment. It is a book of Martin Lee and Norman Solomon, Unreliable Sources, which is a really good book. It explains a lot of American reporting, which means of German reporting as well. It
Hmm.
is written 40 years ago, but pretty good. I learned a lot of reading this.
Yeah. So this is the kind of way we have to create resilience in ourselves. Um,
Yes.
maybe very last point. Do you think that this will this will turn back again, or do you think the machine is ir I mean, you look in Russia, like in the Soviet Union, we had all of these pravdas, and pravda, if I'm informed correctly, means truth.
Yes.
And there were these newspapers, right? And they spilled out horrible propaganda back in the
Mhm.
days. But it was at some point it became so transparent that people just checked the pravda in order to understand what the higher ups want them to believe. They didn't actually go anymore for they didn't believe it anymore. Are we at a point where this is happening on a broad in a broader spectrum as well in Germany and Europe?
So I don't have much hope in a time when you have trains and locomotives. You don't get back to horses.
Hmm.
But um, you will have horses in zoos, for example, or for the children. And this will be the role of the today's mainstream media. We will have the mainstream media as a propaganda machine of the states, but only with a small piece in a small piece of the market. And the biggest market will be the new media, the alternative media. So we have a great change in the media processes. And the mainstream media, I think, are lost and we cannot go back. We have to be open for the new media. We have to get our information from the new media and to work for the new media. And the other part is just the propaganda part. And it will be seen as a propaganda machine, nothing else. Go with the trains, not with the horses. It's
Which
just a thing for weekends.
which means we have to the most important fight is not the fight within the propaganda machine. The most important fight is to maintain the regulatory framework that allows for alternative media to flourish, right? Because that one we
Exactly.
can still
Yes.
save. And you
Yes.
could see how people want to attack that as well, right? So
And the only way is you have to pull away the financial crown of the traditional media
mm,
by not buying newspapers anymore because they are warmonger papers, by not financing public broadcasters anymore because the warmongers are in the talk shows. Finance alternative media. That's the way. We have to delegitimize the system.
agreed. Agreed. Patrik Baab, thank you very much for this overview of what's happening and the craziness that's going on. People who want to follow you should go to your homepage, to your Twitter.
Yeah, to my homepage, Patrik Baab, point dot patrickbaab.de, or they can follow my Telegram channel at Patrick Sörlein Baab.
Everybody, check out Patrik Baab's work. Patrik, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you for joining the show.